Hello, I'm retired Battalion Chief Larry Cockman from the Greensboro, North Carolina Fire Department History Book Committee. We're here today at the Greensboro Historical Museum. I'm standing in front of the General Greene, the first steam pumper, or as they called it back then, a steamer. Today, December 9th, 2019, we are starting a new tradition of recording and preserving the heritage and culture of our retirees. Our retirees have contributed so much to the success of our great fire department. Their stories retire with them and are sometimes gone forever when they pass away. They will share their emergency calls that will always be a part of their memories forever. So sit back and listen as they carry us through their journey in the Greensboro Fire Department.
My name is Gary Stevenson Church. My years of service was 33 years. My rank was captain. I started in January 1, 1970, and I finished my tour in February 1, 2003. Yes, I've got some members on the fire department. The first member I had was my brother-in-law, Howard Edward Wood, and then my son, Dwayne Stevenson Church, is now at this time on the department. Yeah, the ones that played a role was Howard Wood, and my brother-in-law, and also another one was Benny Wright, which was a firefighter on the Greensboro Fire Department, and then he was at Station 13 as a chief. The process of joining the fire department was that I had to have an interview with Chief Osborne and Chief Kent, and then I was taken to the training center, and we had to do some hold herself on the ropes and do some running up the steps and other things like that. Before being hired, what happened was that I was not happy in the job I was in. I was making some money at it, but I got one Sunday there, I'll never forget it, telling my wife Virginia, I says, I need to just find out something that I feel like God has designed me to do. And I said, let's just pray. So we fell on our knees and prayed. And that Monday, went back to the insurance company, and I thought, well, I think I'll just go to the fire department and apply. So I went to training at Central Station and talked to Chief Powell, and left from there, and we had the interview, like I said just a while ago, with Chief Osborne and Chief Kent. And after that, that was that day. I was like December the 1st, and then I started training January the 1st. I was so amazed, couldn't believe it, 30 days. So I knew the Lord had given me that job. We had in our class, we had 8 recruits to start with, and then we had, in the middle of our class, we had 3 more recruits that came in, and they finished with us, but then they had to go to the next class and finish that. You know, training, when I was going through training, yeah, there was very good, there were very many times of joy, but I did have some highs, and the highest point was when I got out of training, my brother-in-law, he was making hundreds in all this tests. And the hardest subject that we would take was hydraulics. So I was studying with him with hydraulics, and he was sharp as a tack. But when we went on Monday to take the hydraulics test, I made 100, and he made 95. That brought his average down to 98 and mine to 95. So I finished second class in 95, but I did beat him in hydraulics. It tore him up. Well, in training, we had I had a funny story that stuck in my mind. It was Mike Burke. We called him the flying squirrel because he was so light when he would come out. And he was always into something and always carrying on, and very humorous. Was getting in trouble at times, and usually late a couple of times, had to pull 4 hours. We just had a time with that. But then we, in class, there's another thing, Danny Nelson in our class, they called him Duck because he walked like a duck. And Then we were in class. Chief Kent would try to teach us, and when we'd fall asleep, he would take a chalk and throw at us, or if it was bad enough, he'd throw the eraser at us. So that was some of the funny things, I guess you'd say, it happened in that. When I become a firefighter, the key thing, the first day that I really realized how important it was when Norma Hall come in and swore us in, and I realized this thing is serious. And so, and another thing, Chief Kent made it very serious for us, because 2 classes before ours, there were 17 in the class and only 7 made it, 10 were fired. And he said, "We will fire you, you better study." And that stuck it into our minds, so that everybody did make it, except for one quit before we finished. My first station assignment was at 1401 Westover Terrace, Station 6. And I was assigned hydrant man on Engine 6. My captain was Ozzie Bowman, and my driver was Pete Walker, and my other firefighter was Joe Tippett, and he was the nozzle man and I was the hydrant man. My nickname at that station was Rook. Everything was called, they didn't call me Gary, they called me Rook the whole time I was there for that. And I was there, they called me Rook for 3 years until Joe left and somebody else came in. And so they didn't call me anything at that time. I got my nicknames on the other station. Went to Station 5. We had a situation there that my Chief Flowers come to me and says, I want those guys stopping, setting out on Bozo Beach. That's the little area that we relaxed in, that outside. Well, suntan, they were suntanning, they had their bathing suits and all on, and they had the quick hitch boots beside them, but they was all lathered up and everything on their wool and all that, and they were sitting there suntanning, and Chief Flowers came over, and he was my commander, and he says, "Captain Church, I want that to stop." He says, "That's not very professional," and things like that. And I said, "Okay, we'll stop it." So I went out and I said, "Well, Bozo Beach is now closed." And Frosty just said, "What?" And I said, "Yeah, it's closed." I said, "No more Bozo Beach." I said, "We all just going to have to get up and they had to get up at that time and everything. But then when I'd be over there in my office or something, I would be coming across there, and they had a lookout, and they'd say, 'Here comes the shark.' And like I was a shark in the ocean. Says, "We better get ourselves up and get out of here." So they started calling me Sharky, and put a picture on the refrigerator of a shark attack. So that was the situation there. So that we finally got them where they wouldn't sunbathe out there for a while. Well, I was thinking as I was reading over some things, at Station 6 when I first started out, they always work on a rookie a little bit, and I had a problem of getting the flag in the evenings, because now they leave the flag up all day long, but every evening at sundown I was assigned to get the flag in. And I tried to obey all the rules, but that's just one thing, my mind would just go blank on it, and my captain would notice it, tell me, say, "Can you get the flag in?" And I'd get it in, and after about 2 times, I said, "Oh, I hate I forget that thing." So then all of a sudden, if I forgot it, I got a call from Chief Cox. Well, I didn't know that we didn't have a Chief Cox at that time. I was thinking, and then the Chief Cox would say, "I just rode by coming home from work, and I've noticed the flag is still up. I think we need to get that thing down. I just don't like to see the flag flying this late." What happened was, when the flag, if Captain Bowman seen it was still up, he would call Station 5 and get one of the guys. He had a certain guy who'd call me, it's the same one, and tell me, and he'd done this 3 or 4 times, and it was getting embarrassing. And so I was trying to remember. I don't know why I couldn't remember it. And then I went in there and I said, "Do y'all know a Chief Cox?" They said, we don't have no Chief Cox. I said, well, he's something. Somebody's coming home from work. He works an 8-hour shift. You don't know a Chief Cox. And they said, no. And this went on for about 5 weeks, but I missed it 2 or 3 times. And he called every time, and I just finally found out that they were calling Station 5 and setting me up. So that was my rookie ordeal at that time. Not very funny, but it got my attention finally, where I would take the flag down. Okay. Another prank at 11, we had a boy named Hervey, and he loved to throw firecrackers. And he'd throw them in the kitchen, scare us to death, and just like the whole passel of them, and they just all go off. So Doug Christian was there with us, and he threw a whole pack on. When Doug was sleeping in the dorm there, he threw a whole pack on top of his blanket, and they just went off while he was laying in bed. And I mean, paper was everywhere. Didn't catch anything on fire, thank goodness. And we were all laughing about it and everything. Doug come and said, I'll get him. I'll get him. I'll get him. We carried a line gun on our truck, on the truck company. And we never shot it at that time, but so all of a sudden, Doug come in and says, I'm gonna get Hervey tonight. When he gets to bed, and Hervey had always fixed his hair up real good and everything before we went to bed, and he's always...
He fixed his hair before he went to bed?
Yeah, he just cleaned up. I mean, he cleaned up good. So he laid in the bed, and he had the blankets just perfect, and it was dark in there. And he says, I'm going to kick that door open and take that gun and shoot it at him. So it was, it's got blanks in it, but I said, I've got to watch this. And all of a sudden, he kicked that door open, and I was peeping in another door, and he shot, and a flame of fire came out of that thing, and a shotgun sound. Hervey, his feet was kicking like a little baby, trying to get out of that bed. Scared him to death. And we didn't have any problem with Hervey anymore, shooting off firecrackers. When we first started and everything, and we did eat together when I first started in the fire department up till they had individual dorms. But for years we ate together, and we stayed in the same dorm area. And yeah, we did cook. When I was a rookie, I stayed over at Station 6 for 5 years, and I was a rookie for 3. We had one guy that cooked, and then he was our driver, Pete Walker. And because I tried to cook, and I bought some peas in from the garden and didn't look them, and boiled them, and all of a sudden, and it had potatoes and bread, and I thought I'd done pretty good on it. And my captain, Bill Long, at that time, he was eating them, and Pete was eating them, and Joe Tippett was eating them. Joe said, Rook, you done pretty good here. And Captain Long says, yeah, and I really like the protein you got there too. And Joe said, protein? He said, that little meat we got. He said, we don't have no meat here. It's all peas and slaw and potatoes. I said, what do you mean meat? He said, well, this little worm I got right here. He said, my plate, I'll be pulling over the side. He says, you mean worms? He looked up, went up that pot, and there was some worms floating all over the top. I didn't look it, and he was so hot. So that time they said, Rook, you're not cooking anymore. So I ended up being the grocery man, and Pete done most of the cooking. Well, actually, I think it improved. I went to Station 5. And of course, I was captain then, and they were determined I was going to cook. And so I had a specialty. I cooked a canned ham in the can, and I cooked canned green beans, and I cooked canned corn. And I also had mashed potatoes and rolls, and that was my meal. And they started calling me the can man. And so one day I had some visitors come in, and they sat at the table, and I had cooked. I said, come on in here, I want you to eat with us today. And two of the guys got together. I didn't know what they were doing. It was Fuller and Brian Kincaid. They got there, and Fuller started acting like he was choking. And he got up, and then Brian was going to do the Heimlich maneuver on him. And I got nervous. Man, he was really choking away, and Brian jumped up and grabbed him and started doing the Heimlich maneuver. And my friends with me, and we were all nervous, and all of a sudden a can come rolling out on the table. And they said, "What is that?" I said, "Just forget it. Just forget it." They said, he said, "You're going to give us ptomaine poison with all that cans," and they acted like they had got choked on the can. That's what it was. So they really put me down that time. So they called me the Can Man. Well, years ago we had the dorm rooms mainly, and the advantages of those, you could play more, and then of course the private rooms you could study more. So that's kind of what I would think. It was a lot of playing going on in that dorm room, and so that has a difference in a sense. Yeah, it built camaraderie. We had it was actually better in a sense because we could talk to each other and discuss things that we were having problems with, maybe where we're everybody there together, and but it was a lot of playtime, and that's the key. Is that's what we enjoyed, and we missed that. But then, if you needed to study, the other was better to have the study time.
Yeah. Sure.
Yes. Well, as firefighters, that's a good thing about the fire department. We work together, and then of course we would work on our day off. We might go over and help each other. Might help put up a fence before, a wooden fence, and help put on roofs, and helping the other firefighters in brotherhood. It's just a good brotherhood. Yeah, we can all work together, and everybody could do something, a little something or another. So that helped out. The thing about the firefighters, because they're very active individuals, and they know a lot of skills, activities, physical activities and things, and they knew a lot of trades. Some of them were raised in the country, and they all knew about how to work on machinery or whatever, and they would build things. And so if you needed something, somebody knew something what to do. We had electricians and plumbers and carpenters and gopher men. My first job, I was working with my captain, Ozzie Bowman. He told me, I was building a house. He told me, if you will help me on 2 houses to lay the brick, then I'll lay the brick on yours. And so I'll never forget it. I was working on a 2-3-story house. I think about a 3-story house, and we had scaffolding up. And I'll never forget, all of a sudden I slipped and rolled off, and they made a complete roll, landed on my back. And Ozzie looked at it and said, "Are you all right? All I got's fire insurance." Well, the next 2 or 3 days, I got up there and I was working again, and all I'd done is kept his mud, and I was the, well, I ain't gonna say it that way. I was the one that mixed the mortar, and then I loaded him up with brick, and he'd say, "Okay," he said, "No, want some more brick, want some more brick." So I kept loading brick, and he was on about the third scaffold, a third-story scaffold, and I loaded down, and then I got his pan loaded up with mortar, and all of a sudden I heard a little crack. I said, "Oh no." And all of a sudden all that went falling down, and I went and landed on my back. The mud pan went in my face, and brick come on either side of it. It scared me to death. And guess what? When I pulled that pan off, Ozzie is rolling and laughing. I couldn't believe him. I said, "You're killing me." You know, I've noticed that when I was on and we had retired firefighters come by, it was a great access for us to take the time with them, because I picked up on so much information. We had a firefighter, I'm trying to think of his name, I can't think of it. He'd always come over Station 6 on Sunday morning, and he would sit and talk with us, and a lot of times they would be walking.
Chief Deviney.
Chief Deviney, that's who it was. And he really gave us a lot of insight. Thoroughly enjoyed talking to him. There was something going on, we could ask him questions in the past. And then we'd have some other ones come in that we could talk to and tell us about how it was down when they only had 4 stations. And it was really interesting. It's a learning process. Now, on my calls, I went to Station 6 in the spring because I was in training in the winter. So in the spring, the calls kind of slowed up a little bit. And so I can't remember the first call, but I do remember I was just waiting on that fire call, the real fire. And 6 weeks later, I'll never forget it, on a Saturday afternoon, there was a basketball game going on, and we got the call on Grayland Street. House fire, working fire. Oh my heart jumped in my throat. I said, here it is. And we had an open cab, and I had to stand on the back of the truck and hold on. And I was riding the tailgate, and the first thing I had to do, my job was a rookie man, and so they stopped at the hydrant, and my job was a hydrant man. And when they stopped at the hydrant, I got that hydrant, and I locked her in and fixed her right up. She was flowing water, and I walked down that line, and lo and behold, they had a living room fire fully involved, and a guy had jumped out the window. But guess what? Old Rook watched my nozzle man. He put the fire out, and that was Joe Tippett. He done the trick, and I went in and done the overhaul. They stuck me with the overhaul. That's all right for a rookie, he needs it. So we had a real good time. That house is still there today. They actually redone it and saved it. So I can go all the way back and see that's my first house fire. When I was at Station 6, one of the things too that scared me to death at first. We came in, and I didn't know, every time that somebody would pull a box, this alarm would go off and start donging. I mean, it sounded like a big old bell. Bong, 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 bong. And I jumped up, and I said, what in the world? And they said, that's the boxes being pulled. Well, we had to go out and check to see if it was our box. Because there's other boxes too that would go off. And so it had a tape in it, and it would cut a hole in the tape as the tape ran out. And that's the way you can tell which box it was. So, yeah, that was a thrilling thing. Sometimes they would play with you though and turn it on, scare you to death, and they were just running a test on it, so you had to watch them. Also, I just want to say too that mainly we rode fire calls up until I think it was 78, and then they implemented the QRVs, quick response vehicles, and they were going to be riding medical calls. I got word of that, so I started taking EMT. Never had rode a medical call before. I was a driver at Station 15 in 1975. That's when I made driver, but I decided to give up driving to see if I could get on that squad. And I got on that squad, and I was at Station 11, Squad 3, never forget it. Went out there, first medical call, on a squad, got the call, and it was on Death Valley, and it was on I think a Saturday morning. We took off down through there and got on Death Valley, and then where it turns into 29 underneath the bridge, our car had an accident, and we responded right upon it. But our victim was safe. Only one car accident, and but it was a thrilling and a scary feeling because it would be our first one. Well, on the QRV, that's one of the differences on the QRV. It's emergency medical. It was actually fire and medical and vehicle extrication. We have the Jaws of Life on there. Cut the roofs back, cut the roof off, pull the doors open. Also, we had hose. And that was good because they let us ride in on the first in calls. So we started taking Engine 11's first in calls, and 11 rides a lot, so we were having us a ball because a lot of times it would be kitchen fires or something, and we would go in, put the fire out. After that, roll our hose up, and then if it was an emergency medical call, we'd take off on that. So we were having us a time working. The largest fire, when my first largest fire was the Bonded Warehouse on Prescott Street. It was a city block long, and I stayed there. They called me in, and I was all night long on that thing. I had never seen so much fire. I mean, 55-gallon drums was shooting up in the air. We didn't know whether we was going to lose it or not. Cars, taillights in the apartment apartment complexes were melting. It was so hot, and we were scared it was going to jump and get over jump the streets and get over there where First Baptist Church was at. But so we surrounded and drowned it, but it took us a week to get that completely out. And it was a young boy that started that fire and poured some type of gasoline or something on the I think it was all the way down on it was wooden docks, and just poured it down there, and it caught on fire and just set that whole thing on fire. Another large one was Banner Manufacturing Company, and that call was a touchy one. I mean, we thought we had a dock fire, and first engines went in where the dock was at, and we didn't have any windows, so we had one back door. So the truck company went back and took the back door off, but could not. It was still getting so hot inside, and there was boxes stacked full of height, all the way to the height of the ceiling, and they were filled with empty plastic jugs, and it was just smoking and smoking and smoking. And finally they said, "We got to have that roof fitted. Got to have that roof in it." I said, well, I looked at right where at the front entrance, and it was bubbly. I said, we can't go up there. So we decided, I said, well, let's just go in the middle of the building. So we went in the middle of the building, and Captain Cotman at that time was in the inside. He was hollering, and he said, we need to get some of the smoke out of here. And so I said, okay, guys. Took my crew, and we went up. I said, well, let's go to the middle of the building. So we went to the middle of the building, we cut a 4x4 and we flipped it. And all of a sudden, I said, well, Captain Cotman, how's it down there? I said, flames is coming out here, how's it out there? And you said, it's starting to cool off a little bit. And all of a sudden, I heard Chief Noonan say, off the roof. I mean, off the roof now. I said, well, guys, I said, we better get off the roof. I'm so glad. They all three got off, and I climbed off the last one. I went over to the corner, and the whole roof fell in. The walls blew out. I said, oh, my lands. Chief Noonan went home that night, retired. That man saved my life, and I'll never forget it.
Well,
he's one of my heroes. That was a tough one. I'll never forget it. I think about him every time. That man, he knew he knew it was time when he seen the flames, because I didn't realize it as much being a young captain. Well, the key thing on it was that unexposed roof structure. I'm trying to T-bar. Within 10 minutes, if flame hits it, it drops, and that's what was happening. And he realized it. Anytime when I said the flames was coming out, that's when he got us off. And so I knew then, and I learned that little lesson that he taught us. It almost cost us our lives. And the only thing I did that fire that night, they used a battering ram. The only time I've ever used it in a career, and they was trying to knock a hole in the wall. And Julius Evans, my driver, had his finger in the wrong spot, and it cut his finger off. So that was the bad news there. But that's the only injury we had. And well, 9/11, you wouldn't believe I took that day off. My company was working, but I had that day off, and somebody called me and said, you need to turn your TV on. And when I turned the TV on, I seen the plane go through. I seen where a plane had went through, and it was smoking. And then a few minutes later, I seen another plane come on and went right through, and I thought, oh no. And then all that flames, and then all of a sudden people jumping out of the buildings and all that fire, and all that dust and people running. I thought, that's what our job's all about. We run into the fire when everybody else is running out. And it really made me respect them more, and made me respect my job more, to watch out for what I'm doing and knowing that this could happen. So my training changed. I was on a high-level team, and so in confined space, so I was trying to be as safe as I could at that time, and making sure we wore our equipment at this time. And so that was one of the things, the key things that hit me, was that 9/11, and really brought the fire department out to what we really could get ourselves into. Well, I think the public was respected the fire department more than any other time. Even at our station, we had them bringing over things and telling us how much they appreciated the firefighters. So it brought the light out of the fire department to what we really could get into. The next one, the big one I had, was Eckerd's, Northeast Shopping Center. And they got my crew on the roof again. And we started using K-12, but it had concrete, lightweight concrete, and we got the concrete, we chopped it up, and there was K, then we had metal, and we was cutting the metal, and I mean, we had a time cutting that hole, but it was over the pharmacy area. And at that time, we got the hole cut, so I came back down, and smoke was coming out, and I relieved somebody in Sector 2. Mistake was, I didn't go in with my SCUB on, and it was in that drug area at the pharmacy. I was squatting down trying to direct them. I was in the corner down in there, which I could breathe with there, but I was breathing in all those drugs. And when I went back to the station, we got it out. When I went back to the station that night, I took a shower, I was laying in bed, and all of a sudden I started jerking and carrying on, and my body's muscles was moving, and finally I sweated it out. But it was some type of that pharmacy, those drugs was burning, and I was getting lit up with that. Wow. With the fumes from that. So that was a scary time, but so far it hadn't affected me there. And then I got one more. Sure. The next one was A1 Rental. We went in, and Engine 2 was in there, and they couldn't put the fire out, and they called for Truck 5 to go in and back them up. So I usually cut utilities and all, so we went into the firefighting mode because that's what the chief commanded, but we had another truck company coming. So as we went in, it was so hot, we all had to back out, and they had us to back out and go on the roof. Well, we went on the roof, we was going to cut the hole. We did take a ladder with us to lay it down flat in case this thing went and collapsed or anything. And so, sure enough, it was soft. And it was so soft when we started to chop the roof, the axe went down in the hole. I said, "Oh my lands, we have got it." And then Chief Shoemate said, "Off the roof, off the roof." And about that time, there was a flashover, and Truck 7 was in there, and one of Captain Smith was in there, and he just so happened he pulled his glove off to talk on the radio, and it burned his arm. And then O'Brien was there, another firefighter, and he was completely clothed, but it rolled over top of him, and then all of a sudden they went in for quick rescue, and was able to get them out. And that was because the natural gas was still feeding it, so we got the natural gas cut off, we was in pretty good shape. That was my major ones because I almost went through the roof there. I almost went through the roof at Banner Avenue, and I come so close there. And then, of course, the bonding warehouse was just dangerous all the way around with them drums falling. So that was my major cause that I felt like I could have lost my life on. One of the first ones I noticed was Chief Sprinkle. He was a man, I was a rookie, and a lot of times chiefs wouldn't even pay attention to rookies that much. And he'd come over to the station, and he'd get me by myself and talk to me, and make me feel like I was a human being. And I'm not saying all the others didn't, but the other chiefs would come in and they would talk to the captains and all that and leave. But he had a rapport about him that just he made you feel like you were somebody. And he'd talk to me how I was doing and what are you planning and what's your plans all, and take the time. But then that was one at first. He hit me, but then my driver Pete Walker took time with me, and Chief Richards, he took time with me. I'll never forget. My captain was out with a heart attack, and ISO was coming in, and I was driver down there, but I only had 5 year experience, and then we had two other guys. They had 2 and 3 experience, so we didn't even have 10 years experience among us. And my captain graded me above standard, But there was another thing. There was standard, above standard, and outstanding. And Chief Richards called me and says, ISO is calling you out to the training center. He said, do you want me to send you a captain? And I said, no, I think we'll be all right, Chief. He said, you sure? And so we didn't know what we'd do. So I got with Ray and Vance, and I said, look, let's have a prayer before we go out there. We prayed before we left. We took off out there, and they had us set up a cellar fire operation. We hadn't pumped any cellar fires, but all of a sudden that thing, we laid them 2 lines in, we hooked up the cellar fire nozzle and pumped that. ISO inspector said, you can go back to the station now. And everything went like clockwork. When Chief Richards called and said, how'd it go? I said, well, it looked good. He told us it looked good. We done fine. So Chief Richards now, he was the battalion commander. And so when it comes time for my evaluation, he came over and he says, and of course my captain's still out, and he says, here's your evaluation. And he said, and I looked on there and it said outstanding. And I said, outstanding? Nobody gets an outstanding. I said, you got to walk on water. I can't walk on water, Chief. He said, there's a time for outstanding and this is the time for it. And so he really, he encouraged me, and he promoted me like that. So that helped me. He was a great asset to me. And also was, I just want to put that down, as Chief Melvin was the one that had the heart attack, but he would come in and work with us a lot. And he was going to school at the time and bringing some good insights, and so I appreciated him. Chief Kent, Chief Flowers, he was another one who worked with us down at 15. He was my captain down there. Chief Honeycutt, he tried to get me to, he was the one that encouraged me to go to school and things. And Chief Teeters, you get on his team and all of a sudden you felt like you was the best in the world. You had the best, he could pump you up, and I was encouraging there. Chief Eller, he was the type that just had all the patience in the world. And then we had Chief Cockman, that was the same way, but he had a character he always thought about the man's character and had time for everybody, and would lift you up. And then Chief Morrison was a captain we had down there, and he was another one of my first captain when I made driver. And I'll never forget, he took time with his men, and he brought us our own Christmas presents. We didn't usually buy Christmas presents, but he bought them. Captain Burns, D.C. Burns, Ma Burns, we had the best time with him. He always wanted all the hose just exactly level, and he wanted the beds lined up on the tile on the floor. If you done that, you're in good shape with Captain Burns. He was a station man. And Captain Ozzie Bowman, he would clearly play and like to pull on little jokes with us, and I did help him some part-time, and he taught me some good stuff and what to watch out for. And Chief Jack Coble was another one that just blessed my heart because he put me back, he let me go back on high level, or let me go to Station 5, and I'm going to start high level, and I was at 14, and I said, Chief, it's time for me to go back. I want to go downtown son. So he took the time with me, and he was always for the men. That's one thing, he's always for the men. Chief Manus was quite calm, but he was one that would give me some wisdom. He could come out with some wisdom, and it blessed me there. And Chief O.C. Johnson was a man that just amazed me. When he was down, he was always up. They could try to do this to him or that to him. He said, Gary, all I want to do is leave something with the fire department. And he encouraged me. I'd see him in there reading his Open Windows, his little study. And he said, and we was in the same room together. And they took him out of 5 and put him at 15. And lo and behold, if we wasn't trying to teach him training, high-level drills. He went to school on his own to do high-level drills. He was only 15, was training them, so he never give up. And he was promoted to chief, and that was the training center. He's a good man. He taught me that. Chief Colbert was another one. that he wanted to go by the rules, and I like the rule maker, and I would say, and when we were trying to do our raises and all things, to be fair, the best ones get the most. And so I really appreciated that in him, that I could work, and he would work with me on letting me evaluate my men in the way it should be. Chief Shoemate was a good fireground officer. I really enjoyed him, felt safe, and he had that big fire, on Davie Street Fire. So I appreciated him. And Chief Faust, that man was the most amazing thing. When I first come on, he was exercising all the time, and he would train his men, and I thought, man, this guy, and he was in the military, and he worked with the scouts. I said, I just kind of looked up to him. I said, if I could be somebody like that, He would go out and do chin-ups 3 or 4 times a day. I couldn't believe it. I said, and do sit-ups. I mean, he would show it, and he would sometimes ride his bike to work and sometimes walk to work. It was the amazingest thing I ever seen. Chief Parrish, he was another good one. We had a big it was a trailer park, and it had 5,000 gallons of fuel there, and it got a leak, and it was all that 5,000 gallons went out on the grass. And he come out, and I was first, I wasn't captain then, but I was acting captain. And I said, we got 6 inches of oil all over this place.
Elwood Terrace?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I said, we were down there, and he said, guys, I know what to do. He said, let's build a siphon dam. I said, what is that? He said, can we find a pipe around here? Right here's a creek. We built that siphon dam. He showed us how to do it. We called Four Seasons over there, and they started sucking that oil off the top of the water, and didn't have saved it from going all into in the creeks. And he learned that in a class, and he really taught me how to handle stuff when you don't ever do it. And then I learned that. And then Chief Newman, he saved my life. So those are all special people for me. The most heartbreaking moment was over off of Spring Garden Street when we had that apartment fire building, the UNCG students there, and Rachel, we found her, and it just broke my heart knowing that's somebody's daughter, or could have been my daughter, and legs burn off, and it was horrible, and that was one of the toughest things, knowing it didn't have to be that way. So I guess that was the most heartbreaking. And children was another thing, if you see children, but that was the worst case that I believe I ever come up with. And I could say that was low. That was real low. I think Chief Cockman was over there at the station, wasn't you? Well, in our department, we only lost one employee or firefighter. And when I first came on, 3 days I was in training. And the first day I was in training, that night a firefighter got killed. The night before I started training. I started training, and then 3 days later they done the funeral, and it was Jesse Gray, and we had to go to that funeral. And it was so sad seeing that widow so sorrowful, crying. And I thought to myself, is this what I want? Is this what I want? It makes you second guess some of the things. Yeah. So I'm so thankful God has blessed us that we haven't lost another one since then, but we've come close. But if I could do my career, I would definitely do it again, because it's taught me to be a better human being and to get along with people and to trust people. We had to trust each other. And it was such a trust factor that in this situation that I had to, because you could get mad at them and you get a good fire and you're all back buddies again, because we play and carry on, but it was that great trust we had as firefighters, and I wouldn't, and plus the activities we done and the joys we had, I wouldn't give it up for anything. It taught me to be a better man. I've noticed there has been role changes going on, and in the fire department. The biggest change I have found that was through the accreditation, and but there was a lot of advantages in that. I've noticed that we now receive better equipment, we got a higher rating, we've got more manpower, and we've got more professionalism. One of the things that was tough, though, is the evaluations got more difficult, the work plans got more difficult. The playing around the station was not enough time to even do that. You were wore out at 12 o'clock. You were still working, trying to get things going, and then you get back up the next morning early. So that was one of the key things. It took a lot of the play out and done the work, but actually it's made us more professionalized. I would say that the two people, I'm going to say three. My dad, Sam Church, and my mother, Millie Church. And my Sunday school teacher, Ernest Williams. They taught me to trust the Lord. And and I received the Lord in October 1949. And He's given me the wisdom, discernment to go and do this job. And that background is what's made me, I guess you'd say. And I appreciate it. So one thing I'd like to say is this question was, if you were given a chance to speak to everyone any other upcoming firefighters, what would you say to them? And I said, this job is fulfilling and worth sticking to it for 30 years, and then after retirement, you'll have a great brotherhood and sisterhood for life. That's one of the key things. And another question I got is, what else would you like to tell us about your life on or off duty? And I thought about this one, and this one stuck with me. I got to see several of my fellow firefighters receive a personal relationship with their Creator through accepting Jesus Christ as their personal Savior and Lord. And I'm looking forward to seeing them in heaven someday. And thank you for the opportunity.
Okay.
In my recruit class was 8 members to start with. It was Howard Wood and Mike Burke. They had already been on for about 6 months, and then we started training. And then Ronnie Fulp came in, and I came in, and Danny Nelson and Ron Perkins, and another boy named Roy, I can't think of his last name, and Jerry Toombs. And then we had T. Newell to come in the middle part of our class, and then we had Ray Greer, and then it was Pat Williams, that's who was it. And so Pat, he passed away, and I said, oh my. I don't mind climbing pond piers. I don't mind sliding ropes. I'm holding on to something. They told me I'm going to jump into that live net. I thought, oh no. But he said, that's your career. And I said, oh no. You're going to jump into the live net. And the main thing was, I was the heaviest one in class. I weighed 195 pounds, and the rest of them were light. And they were holding that, well, I did have truck 2 to help. And they were holding that net, and all of a sudden I got up there to jump, and they said, oh no. And that didn't help me at all. Chief Kent said, jump, jump, jump. And I just thought to myself, how am I going to be able to jump out of a window with concrete right below me, and they're holding the net complaining about dreading to catch me. And I said, I felt like I was going to plummet to my screaming and bloody death. So I looked up there. He said, you better jump. I'm telling you, if you don't jump, you don't have a job. I said, well, Lord, I worked too hard. If I die, here we go. So I kicked out and jumped. And I'll never forget, I landed my clay on my feet. Chief Kent said, "What is wrong with you? You don't land on your feet." I wasn't wanting to kick out just completely. But then I said, "Let me do it again." And I went up and done it right. And it was fun then because I realized it wasn't going to hurt. But that was the worst time, that if I can think of a training class. The best time of my training class was when, not the training class. Well, yeah, the best time of the training class was 95. But the best time on my department, the most exciting time, was when my squad mate, Mike Lee, came into my room and he laid this paper on there. I didn't see it. He just left and I picked it up and I read it. And he had put me in for Fire Officer of the Year. I like to fell out. I didn't never think I deserved that because of the qualifications and all that. We'd go into that. And I looked at him, I said, "Mike, I can't believe you done that." Well, lo and behold, they didn't go ahead and go through the channels, and I got it. So that was probably the greatest reward that I got, was when Mike Lee, without me knowing it, put me in for Officer of the Year and didn't get it. And so that was, I guess it was the most touching time, best time, the greatest reward I could have got from your man doing it and not letting you know.
We hope you enjoyed watching these documentaries. It was our goal to share and preserve the memories of our retired Greensboro firefighters. It is our desire that these documentaries will inspire future generations to continue the brotherhood, sisterhood, and camaraderie while always striving for excellence in their careers. While fire apparatus, equipment, and technology have improved, several things will always remain the same. The courage and bravery it takes to mitigate natural and man-made disasters will always be a part of the job. Although our retirees are no longer a physical part of the GFD world, a giant piece of each retiree's memories have been shared with you today. These memories will be in their hearts and minds forever. A special thank you goes out to Captain Harold Haney for his many long hours of recording and editing. Thank you, Harold. A job well done.